Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu Shri Vishnu
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamdharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamdharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamdharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamdharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamdharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanirбhavati bharata abhyutanamdharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samstapanartaya samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. Dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam. Dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
Samsara davanalita loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam
Samsara davanalita loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam.
Samsara davanalita loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam.
Samsara davanalita loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam.
Praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam
Praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam.
Samsara davanalita loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam.
Samsara davanalita loka tranaya karunya ganaganatvam.
Praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam
Praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam.
Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam
Vande Guru Shri Jajanaranjana
Jai Kunja Vihari
Yamuna Tiravanashari Jaya Kunja Vihari.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharmarashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Om Hari Om. Om Tat Sat. Very good. Namaste, everyone. Thank you all for being here. As always, every Sunday, this is what we do. We do an online satsanga brought to you very specifically from the world headquarters, the main temple of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, located in Omaha, Nebraska, what we call the Vedic Heartland. What is a growing community here, and a community that we know is going to grow tremendously in 2025. Before we dive into the talk for today, I just want to say something of vast importance. Vast importance. So everyone who is out there, especially, please listen to what I'm about to say. Everyone here is already, I don't need to tell them to pay full attention, they already are. Last night, we watched a film, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. I believe we were up till about midnight. We watched, of course, the extended version. I don't watch anything but the extended versions of Lord of the Rings. Indeed, I even commented that I wish Peter Jackson would at some point have an even more extended version. Maybe 25th anniversary or something like that. But we watched Return of the King. The world as we know it is indeed about to change. We are indeed about to enter a golden age. For people who know, maybe not people who, oh, you've been watching for a month or something like that. For people who have been deeply involved in the International Sanatana Dharma Society, including people who have been with us for 20 years, for longer than that. If you've seen our videos, so many of them, in which I talk about this topic very openly, dedicated to this topic, other videos where I simply mention it again and again and again, you know that I've mentioned this not for years, but for decades. Golden age, golden age, golden age, golden age. And now, for the last, roughly year and a half, others have been now repeating this. And the people on the world scene have been repeating this. Golden age, golden age, golden age. Indeed, we are about to enter a golden age. And the next 24 hours, especially, are going to be significant. What will happen in 24 hours will be something the likes of which actually, truthfully, has not happened in America. Oh, we've had inaugurations. We've had, including tomorrow, 47, I believe, altogether. But the events that will occur tomorrow will be like nothing that ever has occurred in America's almost 250-year history. Indeed, without going into detail, let me just say that we are about to enter something the likes of which some people think they understand. A tiny, tiny minority do come very close to understanding fully. But very few people upon this earth fully understand what is about to happen. America first, and of necessity, and this is also something that I've said for decades, that it begins here. Indeed, that's why Prabhupada came here. That's why so many spiritual teachers throughout history came to America, to America, to America. America has a very special destiny, not just materially, but interestingly, dharmically. What is going to happen is something that is going to be revolutionary, first in America, but then it's going to sweep every corner of this earth. So I ask people, be prepared. Be prepared because it will continue to be a bumpy ride. We know that. We know that. Again, people with magical thinking, with wishful thinking, with New Age thinking, sadly have the idea that, all right, golden age, everything's perfection now. Now all the streets have been magically overnight transformed into gold and everything is wonderful, etc. It's not how it happens. For individuals who have actually read the ancient scriptures, ancient texts that cover such transitions in ages, you know that actually it comes about with enormous chaos, with the opposite of what we actually want. But that's necessary. But then, oh yes, golden age. Golden age, golden age. So I ask people to do many things. I ask you to pray. I ask you to pray to God. I ask you to pray to God for many things. Pray for yourself, for your family, for whatever nation that you are in, because we have people in the ISDS in 70 nations throughout the world. I ask you to pray for your specific nation that you are living in. I ask you to pray for this earth. I ask you to pray for our president in America, Donald John Trump. I ask you to pray to God that the golden age that is coming will come as smoothly as possible, as smoothly as is feasible. And I ask you to pray that Dharma become ascendant again in our world and be restored fully and perfectly, which it shall. But I ask you to pray anyway. I ask you to pray because your good prayers, your good thoughts are indeed one of the factors that helps to bring about the golden age. It's many things, as I've said before. It's God's grace, it's our work in this world, it's destiny. But I ask you to pray. I ask you to do everything that you can to help those around you in the next several months and years that are coming. I ask you to help those around you to understand what is happening. I ask you that when there are those around you who are confused about what they're seeing in the news, because as people have been for several years now, this will continue. People are going to see things revealed, the likes of which they couldn't even imagine. And I ask you to be there for those around you if they are confused, if they are scared, if they need help. More than anything, I ask you positively to do everything that you can as an individual. It doesn't matter if you have 1 penny to your name. It doesn't matter if you are a millionaire. It doesn't matter if you have zero power, that you think you have zero power. Of course, that's not really true. But it doesn't matter if you think, oh, who am I? I have zero power. Or if you are someone watching right now and you are a prime minister of a nation. I ask you that you do everything in your power to help to bring good to our world now. Now is the time. Now is the time to unleash yourself. Now is the time to activate that good that is there within you, such that we will have a world dedicated to Dharma, dedicated to truth. So indeed, return of the King. And many more kings to come. Very good. With that, let us dive into our talk for today. And what we are going to be talking about is disciplic succession. Disciplic succession. We're going to be commenting very specifically on 3 verses that are of great importance in the Bhagavad Gita. Indeed, let me just say, a few minutes before the live stream even started, we were talking about this. How the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the beginning of the 4th chapter, is quite important, actually. There is a lot that is there, including the 2 verses that we all recited at the very beginning when the puja was starting. That's from the 4th chapter. Well, I'm going to be commenting on 3 verses from the 4th chapter, and very simply verses 1, 2, and 3, that talk about disciplic succession, how disciplic succession works, how it is that we derive knowledge. So with that, let's dive into this. And in order to follow along, please feel free to just go to the description of this video, and we have all the verses there. So we will begin with Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 and verse 1. And these are all very well-known verses. The Blessed Lord said, Shri Bhagavanu Vacha, the Blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Very nice. Now, why is this verse of significance? Several things, actually. First of all, let me back up and explain the context in which we are finding these verses. First of all, of course, these are verses from the Bhagavad Gita. What is the Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad means Bhagavan, means God, and Gita means song, the song of God. But more, Bhagavad Gita is several things, actually. In fact, let me back up on the backup. Bhagavad Gita is only 700 verses, yet the significance of it is so multi-layered that this is why people have studied this work for the last 5,200 years. This is why there are way over 1,000 translations into English alone, why it's translated into pretty much every language on the face of the earth, why all of the great gurus, acharyas, etc. have commented and commented on this work. So I was about to say, the Bhagavad Gita is a yoga text. Oh yes, that's true. It's a yoga text. It's also a bhakti text. It's also a Vedantic text. Interestingly, this is another aspect that people don't focus on very much, and yet is the case. It's a Sankhya text. For those individuals who understand what Sankhya is, this philosophical school known as Sankhya, all throughout Bhagavad Gita, Krishna even speaks about this. It is a text on the nature of yajna. in which again and again Krishna speaks about this. And I can go on and on and on. This is the nature of the Bhagavad Gita. It's truly astounding. And indeed, this is why it is the case that people have studied it for so long, why it is considered to be one of the most important texts in all of the Vedic scriptures, of which there are hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of Vedic texts. Now, all that being said, what we're focusing on today is Bhagavad Gita specifically as a yoga text. And this aspect is extremely important. Now, when we talk about Bhagavad Gita as a yoga text, of course, for those individuals, especially, let's say in the West, who have heard this term yoga, a person might say, well, but wait a minute, I don't see any asanas there. Actually, you do in the 6th chapter, slightly. You see a quick mention of asana in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Otherwise, this is a work on the philosophy of yoga, on what is the actual nature of yoga. So with that understanding, what Krishna is speaking of here is precisely how it is that yoga, quote unquote, originated. From whence is yoga derived? So this is what he's speaking about here. This is the actual translation. If you look at the Sanskrit, it is yoga. So let's look at this. First of all, Sri Bhagavan Nuvacha. First of all, we begin with this. The Blessed Lord said. Now, why is this of great importance? Again, you see this, if you look at the Sanskrit, you see this again and again in the Bhagavad Gita, that when Krishna is about to speak, you have this term, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, that the Blessed Lord says, the Blessed Lord spoke, etc. Why is this of importance? Well, of course, this is of importance in order to establish the authority of then what is about to be said. It's not merely enough to just say, Krishna said. No. Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, thus spake. And what is the importance of this? Again, it is to establish this authority, that the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita are not just some run-of-the-mill person with his or her opinion, but rather this information is coming from the very highest, from the top down, from that which is the supreme personality of Godhead, to quote Prabhupada. So we begin with this. And now Krishna actually speaks. I instructed this imperishable science of yoga. Now let's stop there. What is yoga? Yoga, from yuj, from the Sanskrit verb root, meaning to bring together, to yoke, to unite, etc. Well, yoga itself, coming from this root, it's understood what yoga means is union. Union. And more than this, what yoga is indeed the pathway by which we can come to perfection. You know, today we live in a jungle of confusion. This is early to mid 21st century Kali Yuga. And that being the case, we know we live in an age of confusion, a jungle of confusion with competing opinions, ideologies, etc., etc., etc. My religion, your religion, my spirituality. I just invented something yesterday. I'm going to start a YouTube video, make money, etc., etc., etc. And tens of thousands of examples like this. And with what I'm about to say, this is the sword by which we cut through this jungle of confusion. Yoga is the preeminent path for spiritual development, bar none. Everything and anything else that you can mention, this practice, that meditation, this quote-unquote technique, etc., etc., has yoga either as its originating source or is a cheap, pale reflection of yoga. Yoga is the path. There is no other path. If an individual wants to make spiritual progress, in other words, if an individual wants to, not just speculate, not just debate, not just live in their head, but never actually sit down like this and sit for 3 hours in silence and meditate. If an individual truly wants to know truth, truly wants to know themselves, truly wants to know God, what they do, what they practice is what is called yoga. No, yoga, not in any sectarian sense whatsoever. Yoga meaning the preeminent, and what does Krishna say here? imperishable practice by which we know the absolute. Now, why is this word important, imperishable? Because of what I said a few moments ago. Everything else that we now have in 2025, in, as I said, this jungle of confusion of this religion, that practice, this kind of meditation, etc., etc., all of that pales into insignificance in comparison to yoga. Yoga is that one that is imperishable. No, it wasn't invented in the 19th century. It wasn't invented 2,000 years ago. It wasn't a matter of, some weirdos 3,000 years ago lived in the forest and quote-unquote experimented until they came up with some interesting ideas and forms of meditation. Yoga is imperishable, meaning that it is the path that always has been there, that has been established indeed by God himself, and that always will be here. It is the preeminent practice by which we perfect ourselves. And that is the most important takeaway from what is being said here. This is the most important thing, is that what Krishna is saying is that what is the source, what is the origin of yoga? It is God. He himself, Krishna, Narayana, is the source of yoga. So let's go through this. And the names are not quite of importance. We're not going to go through all these people because that's not the point. The point is Krishna himself instructed the science of yoga to whom? To Vivasvan, to the sun god, Surya, to the sun god. And then he instructed it to Manu. Manu being the progenitor of humanity, the first human. And then Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. And then you can imagine, it continues from there. From teacher to disciple, teacher to disciple, teacher to student, and on and on and on. From the very beginning of time, all the way up till now. Now, all that being said, let us now go to the second verse. And the second verse is also of extreme importance. For those individuals who study Bhagavad Gita, you know these verses that we're going through today, because all three of these verses are very important. And as I've said, the entire first section, the beginning section of the fourth chapter. So now we're going to look at chapter 4, verse 2. This supreme science of yoga was thus received through evam parampara praptam, through the chain of disciplic succession. And the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Very nice. Now, several things to be understood about this. In fact, in a way, we're going to go from the very end backwards to the beginning. First of all, this is a very mysterious thing that Krishna says here at the very end. Therefore, the science as it is appears to be lost. Indeed, we understand this has always been the traditional understanding within the totality of Sanatana Dharma from 5,200 years ago up until now. And that is that when Krishna appeared upon this earth as the avatar of Narayana, he came for several reasons. Indeed, almost every week we recite this yada yada hi dharmasya, these two verses. It explains why Krishna incarnates, why all the avatars come, to uphold dharma, to annihilate in the miscreants, those who are evildoers, etc., etc. But one other reason why he came 5,200 years ago specifically was to recite, to sing, to reveal the Bhagavad Gita. And why? Because of what he says. Therefore, the science as it is appears to be lost. Indeed, this is what happens periodically, and it's not surprising. On the one hand, like Dharma, the science of yoga is something that is eternal. It is always there. However, this is the nature of truth, of goodness, of that which is immaterial being present within the material world. That necessarily, due to human failings, sometimes it becomes lost, sometimes it becomes watered down. Indeed, what was I saying a short time ago? Where are we living today? In a vast jungle of confusion, where indeed absolute truth is lost among so many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of voices, very few of whom know what they're saying. So this is what happens. that we begin by there being pure truth. And generation after generation after generation goes by. But then for one reason or another, it disappears. Sometimes it disappears because, those individuals who have truth are forced by evildoers to go somewhere, to hide in the jungles, etc. There are many reasons why this happens. But at the time when Krishna was here, 5,200 years ago, this was one of these times when the full truth had been lost to humanity. Thus, this is why Krishna had to come back and reveal that truth. And again, this is another reason why we have to feel that we are the most fortunate people, that we have this Bhagavad Gita, because here is Krishna restoring truth for all of us to know in such a way that, for myself, let me tell you, it always amazes me how I first read Bhagavad Gita when I was 10 years old. And when I read Bhagavad Gita when I was 10 years old, I didn't even have to get through the second chapter. And I felt as if an atomic bomb had gone off in my heart, in a good way. I realized right then and there that I was facing the truth. I felt as if I was looking up and facing the totality of the cosmos singing to me. That's what it was like when I first read Bhagavad Gita. And it's amazing to me when I think about this sometimes, that today, how fortunate are we? This is the nature of modern communication. We have at our fingertips all knowledge, and yet few people appreciate it. People are more confused now than ever. We have the Bhagavad Gita. We have it literally in print. You can listen to it, there are audio versions, etc. Prabhupada first published his Bhagavad Gita as it is, which is the best translation in the English language, I believe 1968. So we've had that for so many decades, several generations now. And yet, despite this fact, how many people are there who they waste their time going from this New Age, let's say YouTube channel, to this New Age book, to this new person, that new person, and they don't take the time to read this Bhagavad Gita that is 5,200 years old and that has been so important to the point where all of the greatest gurus in history have written their commentaries on it, trying to explain it, themselves trying to understand it. It's truly astounding to me. But how fortunate are we that indeed we are living in a time now such that we have this Bhagavad Gita and we cannot say, the truth has been lost to us. It's there. We simply have to read, and not just read, not read it the way we're reading some book by some author who put out some bestseller on so-called spirituality 5 years ago. No. We have to read the Bhagavad Gita not just as it is, but as what it is. And what is it? It's the song, literally, of God. God sung this on a battlefield. I know, not sing in the way that common people today would understand. You can think of the greatest singers today. And if that greatest singer were to hear God singing Bhagavad Gita, they would fall to their knees. They would fall to their knees in awe. We have this Bhagavad Gita. Please read it. But now let's look at the rest of this verse. Let's go now to the beginning. This supreme science of yoga, so again describing this very nicely, that this is not just anything, this is the supreme science, was thus received through the chain of parampara, of disciplic succession. Indeed, this is how we learn truth. The way that we learn truth is Vedically, and actually at one time this was understood by everyone pre-Enlightenment era. So in other words, even up to about 400 years ago, everyone understood this. That how do you learn actual truth? It has to be something that has been carried down to you from the beginning of time. Not, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he's just written a wonderful new book. Look, fellow philosophers, look, isn't this wonderful what Jean-Jacques has written? We should read this. And no, that's not how you derive truth about anything. If you don't know who that person is, one of the stupid Enlightenment thinkers, one of the stupider ones actually. But no, this is not how we derive truth. Previous to the Enlightenment era, it was actually understood that how do we derive truth? It must be something that was handed down to us from master to master, to master, to master. Parampara, parampara is the Sanskrit word, meaning disciplic succession from the very beginning of time. It has to be handed down purely, has to be handed down in an unadulterated manner, has to be handed down in a way that is living. So in other words, not just intellectual knowledge, but it has to be handed down in such a manner that each of these individual conduits of truth are individuals who themselves practiced and experienced that truth. And this is how truth is carried down. It is a continuous, unbroken stream, starting from Bhagavan himself and coming down to Rishi and Rishi and Rishi, a god there once in a while sprinkled in, a deva sprinkled in, carried down to Acharya and Guru, all the way down to our present day, purely. This is how we know truth, and this is the nature of this word, parampara, that is disciplic succession. But now let's go on to this other clause, the second clause that is here. And the saintly kings understood it in that way. What am I going to say? How significant is this? A little bit or very? Crucial. This is what Krishna says. You feel free. Go play with the Sanskrita, look at it, and you'll see this is what Krishna says. Exactly in the Sanskrita. Now, why does he point out specifically? He doesn't say, "Oh, the yogis." He doesn't say, "and the saintly yogis and the saintly rishis and the saintly this or that or the other." No, he says in the Sanskrita, "and the saintly kings understood it in that way." First of all, this is crucial. This is something that it's interesting. Earlier, even academics, and I don't give them a lot of credit, as people know, but even earlier academics, meaning early 20th century, some of the individuals you could read up until maybe the 50s, 60s, something like that. A lot of them had a good grasp on what I'm about to say, actually. And they actually got this. Now, even the academics are more confused than they ever have been, sadly. But this was also always understood within the tradition itself. Who have always been historically. No, this is the case if you read the Mahabharata. This is the case if you read any of the Puranas. This is the case if you read the Ramayana. This is the case if you read so many of these works. Who were the preeminent yogis throughout history? Who were the individuals who were responsible for keeping it alive? Who were the individuals who, historically, from the beginning of time up until the axial age, literally, like 5th, 6th century BC, who were the individuals who kept yoga pure, who revived yoga at a time when it was almost forgotten? Who were these individuals? Again and again and again. They were kings. They were saintly kings, Rajarshis, Chakravartins. And you see this again and again and again. And it's very interesting. This is a tradition that was understood, again, always within Sanatana Dharma, even to the point where academicians in the West also knew this and wrote about this copiously, that, yes, yoga is Raja Yoga. It's the yoga of kings. People understood that. Now everyone's forgotten that, in the last maybe 2 or 3 generations. But this is something that is crucial. Why is it crucial? The reason why it is crucial is because what we see in the personage of the Rajarshi, of the Chakravartin, of this sort of individual who is being discussed here, that is a person who on the one hand is a perfect king. No, think of a perfect king. Think of an Aragorn. Think of someone like this. Historically, think of a King Arthur. Someone who, yes, they lead battles, they have their sword, etc., etc. They defend their nation. They rule justly. Think of someone who is that on the one hand, and yet on the other hand, someone who is also a pure yogi. What do I mean by a pure yogi? They do asanas, they do pranayama. They follow not only the yamas and niyamas, they follow all of the ethical precepts of yoga. These are individuals who engage in dhyana, in meditation, deep meditation. These are individuals who, they themselves are the chief priests of the main temple of their nation. They're perfect yogis, but they're also perfect kings. This is who Krishna is speaking of here. And these are, again, the individuals who, throughout time, throughout history, have kept yoga alive. 1,000 examples I can give you, you better believe it. What is one that everyone can relate to? The Buddha, Gautama. Gautama, Buddha, was one of the more latter day of these individuals, let's say. He was a Kshatriya, he was royalty, he was destined to be king, his father was king, he was destined to be king, and he becomes a yogi, and he achieves self-realization. But he's still a king. That's why to this day in Buddhism, he is called, throughout all of Buddhism, Theravada Mahayana, he is the Chakravartin. He is recognized as the Chakravartin. He is also a person who is a perfect ruler, perfect yogi. So it's fascinating that Krishna himself confirms this, that indeed it is these individuals who are the preeminent yogis. Now, what else does he say in this clause? And the saintly kings understood it, i.e. yoga, in that way, i.e. through disciplic succession. So how amazing. Even these saintly kings, this is how they understood what was the nature of yoga. This is how we are to understand. That indeed, it can't be just some person who comes out of nowhere, they don't have a guru, or they make up some guru, they don't have a guru, and they claim, oh yes, now I'm a guru, I'm going to teach you yoga. Or they have a so-called lineage that goes back 150, 200 years, etc. No, the way that we know that a teaching is real is that it has to have been carried down since when? Let's look at this again. Let's look at the very first verse of this again. Krishna taught this to Vivasvan, to the sun god. When do you think that was?
Treta Yuga?
It was way before that.
Oh, even.
Yes, it was actually before that. It was close to the beginning of time. That's another thing that we will go into, is that this is not the first time that Krishna has spoken this, Bhagavad Gita. In fact, he'll say that a little bit later. But indeed, he has spoken this again and again and again and again. Because keep in mind, who did Vivasvan teach it to? Manu.
Yes.
Yeah, the progenitor of humanity. So that means this all occurred before they were even humans. All that there were the devas and devis. All that there were the gods. So we're talking about billions of years ago, actually. Yeah. So this is what is amazing. This is a parampara. This is disciplic succession. That's why, I'm always very strict about this. Whenever someone brings up, well, what about this occultic path that was invented 200 years ago? What about this Kabbalah, medieval era? What about this? What about that? What about, etc. Oh, well, I have a New Age teacher and he had a teacher. Oh, cute. Very nice. We're talking about a disciplic succession going back to the beginning of time. That's real. That's real. That's real. So this is also what Krishna is saying here, etc. All right, we've dealt with this verse. Let's go on to the last verse that we're going to look at. And that is Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4 and verse 3. That very ancient science of yoga is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mystery of the science. Of the 3 verses that we've now looked at, we could say this is the most important one. Why? The previous 2 verses explain the process by which truth is handed down. Now, that's crucial to know. That's very important to know. But let me ask this question. Simply knowing the process by which it is handed down, does that mean that you are worthy of knowing it? No. No. It's important to know this. Oh, we need to know because of everything that I've just said, so that we know, okay, what is not truth, what is not truth, what is truth? What is truth? It has to have come down since the beginning of time. So it's important to know this. But now, how does one make oneself worthy now of entering into that divine stream of parampara? You can see this parampara, this disciplic succession, as quite literally a water, like a river coming from the heavens, almost like the Ganga. People may not know this. The Ganga, when people think of what in English we call the Ganges, the Ganga. When we think of the Ganga, many modern people, they think of, oh yes, a nice river in India. No, the Ganga actually originates from the highest of heavens, actually originates from outside the material world. And it's a long story that I won't go into, but essentially it starts from the outside of this material world. Trivikrama, one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu, again, long story I won't go into. He penetrates the covering of our universe with his toe. The water starts to come into our universe. It covers his feet, which is why it is sacred. Then it goes from the highest heavens, the highest heavenly plane, to the one lower than that, to the one lower than that, to the one lower than that, until finally it appears in our stratosphere and it hits the top of the Himalayas. From there, it proceeds downward in the form of, we can't see it because we don't have the vision, it looks like ice. It's moving ice. People, scientists have confirmed this. It eventually melts and becomes water in the Himalayas. Then it starts to come down into the northern part of India all the way to the Bay of Bengal. Well, in the same way, that also is how Parampara, in a way, operates. That this divine teaching comes from quite literally outside of the material world altogether. And in the same way that you have that river of the Ganga, you have, let's say, that divine stream of the Parampara, of guru and disciple, guru and disciple, guru and disciple, coming all the way down to today. So that is how Parampara works. Now, all that understood, again, that still doesn't mean that we are ourselves necessarily worthy of entering that stream ourselves. How do we become? This is now what Krishna explains. So that very ancient science of yoga is today, that is 5,200 years ago, told by me to you because, and now here are the reasons. Here are the qualifications that an individual needs to have in order to know truth. These are the qualifications that an individual needs to have in order to know truth, in order to enter, again, this parampara, this disciplic succession. So please listen very carefully. Because you are my devotee. Now let's stop there. And indeed, again, this is what the Sanskrit says. Actually, feel free, look it up yourself. This is what it says. So with this understanding, it is indeed bhakti that makes an individual eligible to enter parampara, this disciplic succession. Devotion, devotion, devotion is everything. It is via devotion that we have the ability to bypass our false ego. It is our false ego that keeps us from understanding the truth, that keeps truth from penetrating into our hearts. So thus we are to practice bhakti. But then he goes a little bit deeper, as well as my friend. How amazing, how interesting. Why does he say this? Well, there's the surface level. He says this to Arjuna because they literally are friends. But again, is he only speaking to Arjuna? Of course not. Of course not. We understand that Arjuna was there as a conduit, that Arjuna was there, but in actuality, Krishna, he was speaking to Arjuna, but he's also speaking to us. He's speaking to any sincere individual who will pick up the Bhagavad Gita and read it. So what is he saying here? He's saying that you will know this truth because you're my devotee and also my friend. So in other words, when we recognize that Krishna, that God is our very best of friends, when we embrace God as our friend, when we realize that we are the friend of God and God is our friend in the truest spiritual sense of this term, then the truth will be revealed unto us. Very good. And then he ends with this clause. Therefore, in other words, as a result of what was just said, because you are my devotee, because you practice bhakti, but also because you accept me, God, as your friend. In fact, let me pause on that for a little while. Let me just say a little bit more. What does it mean to be a friend? You know, we all have somewhat of an idea, but let me explain what it means to be a friend in the true sense of this word, actually. It's interesting. Very few people know this, but when I was at Loyola University taking philosophy classes, I actually did an entire course on the philosophy of friendship and love. And we studied everyone from Aristotle to Kierkegaard. It was very interesting. What does it mean to be a friend? A real friend, not just a buddy, again, not a drinking buddy, not someone you get together, play poker with. No, 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 no. A true friend. That, just to give one of many examples, this is someone I've known since I was a child, and we've been through thick and thin, and we truly care about each other, etc. And bad things have happened, good things, but we've stuck together in our friendship. What does it mean to be a true friend in this way? It means that this is someone who to use the colloquial, has your back. It is somebody who is on your side. It's someone who others may turn on you, others may not understand you, but your friend does. It's someone who you trust. It's someone who you honor. You do good things for them, they do good things for you, etc. And not in a calculating sort of way. If I do this for my friend, then I'll get some. No, 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 no. You want to do good things for them because you love them, and vice versa. That's what it means to be a true friend. Well, imagine that when Krishna says this, that you are my friend, this is what Krishna is saying to us. That what is Krishna? Krishna is Paramatman. What are we? We are Atman. There is no better friend than God. There is no one closer to us than God. So this is indeed what Krishna is saying here. When you realize this, now the last clause, therefore you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science, of yoga. It's as a result of understanding this that indeed God is our friend in every way. Then at this point do we open ourselves in such a way that, and this is nice, this is Prabhupada's translation. I like how he translates this. The transcendental mystery. It remains a mystery as long as it is not the case that we open up our hearts to God. Then it is ever a mystery. It's forever a mystery. But it's when we open our hearts to God, as is said here, by having devotion to God and by being God's friend and understanding God as our best friend. It is at that point that it's not a mystery anymore. It becomes clear. The fog is lifted, the light is turned on, and now we can see. But more, it's not just a science, it's a transcendental science. So again, this part also is important, dealing with what I especially said in the beginning and all throughout this. Yoga is transcendental. Nothing else in this material world is. Pick a religion, a path, a this, a that, a form of spirituality, a practice. None of them are transcendental. They came into being at one point or another. You can give me the name of almost any religion, and I'll tell you the date that it was started. You cannot say the same thing about Sanatana Dharma or about yoga. It is transcendental. It is, therefore, eternal. So this is very nicely how we will end here. And with that, for a short time, I want to see if there are any questions at all about what we spoke about today, or if anyone has any sincere questions about Sanatana Dharma. Please feel free to ask. And you can either ask in the chat online. We may have, hopefully, some questions here as well. But in any case, please ask questions if you would like. Give me a few moments. I'm just reading here. Very good. I will actually answer this question. It's a two-part question. And as I tend to do these days, I won't read the names of the people because, that's not of importance. I like to give people their privacy. But I will read this two-part question. And it is, Namaste Shri Acharyaji. I come out of an Arya Samaj family, but became a Sanatan after reading the Gita and listening to you. First, I had no connection to any deity, but now I can see God in nothing but Krishna. I have such a strong connection to the warrior form of Krishna and the dharma he gives me to fight. What does this mean? What this means is that you are on your way to achieving the meaning of life and success in your life. full spiritual success. So I'm very happy, and this is why when I saw your two-part question, immediately I wanted to answer this, because it's absolutely wonderful. Let me say, let me just for a moment say the Arya Samaj, I know the Arya Samaj extremely well, very intimately. In fact, I forget when it was, 1, 2, 3 months ago, someone asked me about this and I gave a very detailed answer about the Arya Samaj. Yes, I know the Arya Samaj very well. When I say I know them well, I don't mean just, I kind of read a few things about them. I've given talks. I was invited to give talks at several Arya Samaj temples throughout the nation, including in Texas and Chicago, the Chicago suburbs, and several places. I gave a talk at an Arya Samaj convention that took place in America. So again, I know the Arya Samaj extremely well, and let me say that it is very good, without criticizing anything, it is very good that you have now moved on to read Bhagavad Gita and to understand that indeed Sanatana Dharma and the Vedic way needs to be embraced fully. It's not enough to just say, I accept only the Shruti literature. I accept only the 4 Vedas, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and the Upanishads, and everything else is nonsense. No, that's not the understanding of all the acharyas who existed since the beginning of time. We need to embrace all of the Vedic scriptures, and that also means the Itihasas, that means Mahabharata, Ramayana, that means all of the Puranas. The Puranas are pure. They are the histories of humanity. That's what the Puranas are. And indeed, for Bhagavad Gita itself, we know that Bhagavad Gita is just several chapters, 18 chapters of Mahabharata. And when we read Bhagavad Gita, again, this is why I prefaced by saying this, that when we read Bhagavad Gita, we very quickly understand that we are reading something of vast cosmic significance. And indeed, what to speak of the words of Lord Krishna, that Krishna is giving us these truly astounding teachings, that for even some of the smartest people in this world, they have to sometimes study the Bhagavad Gita for half their lifetime and read it 50 times to fully understand what the Bhagavad Gita is saying. This is the wonder of this work, and even that is secondary. The most important thing is, and you can imagine, this is just logic, if the work, if the book, if the text is that important, what to speak of the mouth from whence the text is coming? And that mouth is the beautiful lotus-like mouth of Bhagavan Sri Krishna. If the text is that sacred, what to speak of the person who is the origin of that text? So indeed, this is why we worship Krishna. Krishna was not just some great man, some heroic figure. Krishna was indeed Bhagavan. That's why Bhagavad Gita. He is God. He is God. He is the avatar of Vishnu. And with this understanding, this is how we can come to truly know God in a very real, very intimate, very personal sort of way, by indeed embracing the personality of God, of Godhead. That is Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Now you say very specifically, and I love this actually, that you say, I have such a strong connection to the warrior form of Krishna. Oh yes, absolutely. Let me tell you, this is something also that you say you hint that you've been watching these videos for some time because you say that we've had a positive influence on you, and I'm very happy about that. But let me also say this: we are among the first people to really reveal this fact that Krishna was a warrior. He was a Kshatriya. He was a Dharma warrior. Again, people sadly, and this is true both in the West and as far as Indian Hindus as well. I must assume you're an Indian Hindu because the Arya Samaj has almost no followers outside of Indians. But it's interesting, so many people, Indian Hindus, Westerners, they have had this idea for too long that anything Vedic is weak and passive. And we have taught that no, in actuality, this is a warrior tradition. How do you know this? You just read the scriptures. And you see warrior after warrior after warrior. Indeed, what did we just cover? that yoga itself was preserved by the kings, by warriors. The kings were warriors. There's no such thing, especially in Vedic times, as a person being a king, but I'm not a warrior. No, that person would not be a king. If they were on the throne and they said such a thing, they would be very quickly escorted off the throne. The kings were warriors, and in the best sense of that term. So indeed, when we think about Krishna, Krishna was many things. Was he a guru? Oh yes, he was Adi Guru. He was the first of all gurus. Is he God? Oh yes, he's God. But he's also a warrior. He's also a king. Indeed, he was the king of Dvaraka. He had his own kingdom. So the fact that you recognize this and that you find yourself having a strong connection to Krishna as warrior, that is wonderful, and I encourage you to continue to explore that connection in every way. What does this mean? This means that it's quite possible your own Swadharma is being revealed to you. That's what it means. So explore this as much as you can. Very good. And with that, please give me a moment as I look at some more of these questions. Very good. Here is a nice question. Namaste, Sri Acharyaji. I have two questions. One, are astrology, numerology, and augury dharmic? Let me answer that right off the bat. Yes. Yes, they are. Indeed, they originate in the Vedas. All these things, astrology, as people may or may not know, astrology is one of the Upavedas. It's considered to be Jyotisha, is what it is called. And it is something that is of extreme importance. So astrology, but also what you mentioned, numerology, augury, all these things are not only dharmic, but they originate in the Vedic scriptures. And then you ask, how can one make his soul pure? By exactly everything we've been speaking about today, yoga. Yoga, yoga. Now again, I need to emphasize this because I don't know who you are. I don't know if you have a lot of knowledge on this topic or this is very new to you. But let me just say, let me assume more the latter. Yoga doesn't just mean doing asanas, doing headstands. Yoga is the full system of sadhana, that is systematic practice by which we perfect ourselves in everything that we are. Physically, oh yes, certainly, but that's of least importance. We perfect our breath, we perfect our mind, we perfect our emotions, we perfect our intellect, we perfect every aspect of who we are. This is the yoga system. It's a philosophical system. It is a system of meditation, and more, meditation is the very heart of yoga. So indeed, how can one make his soul pure? Precisely by following the path of yoga and meditation. What does that mean? What does that look like? Well, now I challenge you. Go back to all of our older videos where I explain this more thoroughly than anyone ever has in the English language. So please go back, watch, systematically in your spare time, as many of our older videos as you can. I have many videos where I talk about yoga. Also read our books. Specifically, when you have a chance, pick up Sanatana Dharma, The Eternal Natural Way. It's available on Amazon. It's available on dharmacentral.com. And that will tell you how to practice yoga. Very good. Shintoism and yoga are correlated in the fact that the Shinto religion is the Sanatana Dharma of Japan. So in other words, it is a slightly watered down, and that's not to be insulting actually, it's simply the case, it's a slightly watered down version of Sanatana Dharma. That's what Shinto is. As is also the case for all of the pre-Christian European religions, as is also the case for ancient Egyptian religion, etc., etc. They were all derived from Sanatana Dharma. And today, as we find them in 2025, they're a little bit watered down, but still they are to be respected. They're wonderful traditions. But that is the relationship. Good. Very good. Here's a very nice economic question, actually, which I haven't had in a long time. I'm not going to go very in depth into this because, it then takes us kind of outside of our area of concern. And it is, Namaste Acharyaji, is it possible for a socialist or capitalist society to be quote-unquote successful, or does it need to be Vedically restructured? All economic systems need to be Vedically reconstructed. We reject both socialism and capitalism. Both. We see them both as excesses that have led to enormous abuse in so many ways. Socialism itself doesn't work at all, period. That's why there's never been a successful socialist society in the history of humanity. Socialism doesn't work. Capitalism, as is commonly understood, also leads to tremendous exploitation. If you want to go very deeply into this, I would suggest that you read my book, The Dharma Manifesto, where I actually talk about Vedic economics. And I do critiques and analyses of both socialism historically as well as capitalism. So please take a look at that. Very good. I will answer this question actually, and it is, I feel drawn to a particular guru who doesn't have a mandir in my city. The ISKCON temple is very close to my home. Should I just seek initiation from the people that God has placed in my city? No. What you should seek is a guru, regardless of where that guru is, who has the ability to reveal unto you the very highest of all truths. And more, it shouldn't be just a matter of, oh, you like this guru, you're attracted to this guru. You need to analyze all gurus, and this is what you need to ask yourself. Is this individual who I'm considering taking initiation from, is this someone who is qualified? Now, before you say, oh, yes, he seems to be. No. Let me explain what I mean by qualified. Is this someone who has been on the path? And when I say on the path, I mean doing sadhana, strict sadhana, for a very long time, for decades and decades. Is this someone who has studied the totality of the Vedic scriptures? No, not just he can rattle off maybe one or two or a few verses from Bhagavad Gita that he memorized. Has he read and studied the totality of the Vedic scriptures? And no, not just Bhagavad Gita, 108 Upanishads, 36 Puranas, indeed, the Shruti and Smriti literature, all 110,000 couplets of the Mahabharata, etc., etc. And more importantly, has he done all that reading and studying under the tutelage of a guru who is similar to what I'm explaining? In other words, an authentic guru. Is this someone who ethically, morally, is perfect? Let me state that again. Who ethically, morally is perfect. That means he doesn't drink. That means he doesn't steal from people, etc., etc. You can imagine. Look at all the ethical precepts that are there in the Vedic scriptures. Is this someone who more, also on top of all that, has the ability to, as I said before, understand Sanatana Dharma perfectly because, as we were saying, he himself is in a real parampara, number one. But number two, he has the ability to transmit that knowledge in 2025, given all of the conditions that we have today. And I can go on. I'm giving you the bare minimum of what is a true guru. I've given talks on what is a true guru going on for an hour. In fact, some of them are available on our channel. You can see them. Actually, quite a few of them. So this is what you need to look at, number one. Number two, proximity means nothing, physical proximity. I have had several gurus actually who I've taken initiation from. Let's say the one that is most accessible to human beings would be Bhakti Rakshaka Sridhar Swami. At the time, I was living in New York City and he was living in Navadvipa in West Bengal in India. Physical proximity, that was about as far as you could get. He didn't live in my city. He didn't live on my continent. But yet he was purity personified. I went to him. I went to him at a time when I couldn't afford to go to him. I think I have to do the calculation, but maybe I was 21, 22 years old, something like that. You know, I was a young man. I didn't have money. I had very little to my name, but somehow I gathered up the money. I bought a plane ticket, and this kid from Brooklyn, New York, who really had not been outside of the East Coast much at all, actually, but what to speak of, I don't believe I ever left the nation. I flew from New York to London, London to, I believe it was Dubai, Dubai to Dhaka, Bangladesh, Bangladesh to Calcutta, and Calcutta I took a train up to Navadvipa to go to his ashram, and I did that twice, in 1985 and 1986. So my city? No, he didn't live in my city. You don't worry about such things. You worry about the purity of the individual. And indeed, if you yourself have come to the point where, not according to you, but according to God, you're ready, then you'll find a way to find such a person, A, to even find such a person, such a guru, and number two, to make your way to that person. So no, we don't make these decisions based on, oh yes, who's the local guru on my block? That's not how we make these decisions. The way we make these decisions is, let me be so sincere, let me be so on fire to know truth such that nothing will stop me. And if I need to travel quite literally to the other side of the planet, I will. But also, let me make sure that before I do all that effort, that I find someone who actually is real. So that's what I would suggest. Very good. Let me answer this last question and then maybe we'll stop there. And it is, Namaste Shri Acharyaji, is there a way to avoid anxiety about the speed of one's spiritual progression? Very nice. This is a very good, very nice practice question. This is a sadhana question, actually. And let me tell you, I've spoken about this quite a few times. And I'm going to repeat what I've said before. And people have heard me say this, but it bears repeating because it's the perfect answer. Patanjali himself talks about this in the Yoga Sutras. And the Yoga Sutras is an amazing work. You know, I did a class commenting on every verse of the Yoga Sutras maybe 15 years ago, and I believe it was all caught on video. We've released none of it to the public yet. But at some point in the future, I want to do that again, actually, but do this maybe as a live stream. I'm slowly translating the Yoga Sutras among many other projects I'm working on. But in the Yoga Sutras itself, what does Patanjali say? He talks about two things that the successful yogi must have. Number one is abhyasa. Number two is vairagya. These are the two most important things. First of all, there is practice, practice, practice. So what you're talking about here is indeed doing the practice. Because when you talk about, the speed of one's spiritual progression, that doesn't happen without practice. This is what it means to grow spiritually. And I'm sorry to harp on this. I always have to. Again, I mentioned this to one of my students, actually, maybe just a few days ago, that people may not be aware of this, but very often when I'm speaking to half a dozen different audiences at the same time in my mind. It makes it very interesting what happens in my mind, actually. But let me just say that when it comes to this idea of growing spiritually, too many people today have the idea that, and this is just part of our culture in 2025, I want to grow spiritually. What does that mean? I'm going to read as much as possible. I'm going to think about spiritual things, philosophical things as much as possible. I'm going to watch 1,000 YouTube videos about this one and that one and this one debating with that one. And, let's see who has the right idea, the right idea, the right idea, the right idea. And on and on. And that's what people think spirituality is today. The internet has almost killed real spirituality. It's sad. Actually, it's what I was saying before. We live in an era where we are blessed to have information at our fingertips, but too many people use it to just confuse themselves and to think that doing this on a keyboard is what it means to be spiritual. What it means to be spiritual is indeed to practice, practice, practice. So this is why Patanjali explains that, what do you say here? One spiritual progression. We do that by practice. We do that by sadhana. We do that by sitting down, closing our eyes, and meditating. We do that by offering puja. We do that by, indeed, not just studying, but allowing the Vedic scriptures to speak to us in a meditative sort of way. That's also part of our sadhana. It's called svadhyaya in the Yoga Sutras. So this is what Patanjali stresses. Abhyasa, practice, but then the second word, with vairagya, with this detachment. So you ask here, just to get to your question again, is there a way to avoid anxiety about the speed of one's spiritual progression? Absolutely, it's called vairagya. That is, that as we're practicing, as indeed we're making that progress, whether it's fast, whether it's slow, we have to be detached. Detached. It's an interesting thing. People understand, I shouldn't maybe give that much credit. It's easier for people to understand, let me say, detachment in a general sense. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks about detachment. So in a general sense, it's easier to understand this. But now, this is very interesting. What you're asking, again, what Patanjali talks about. What does it mean to be detached within spiritual practice? That is, you are practicing, you're doing your sadhana, you know that you're making some progress. All right, let's say it's very slow. But you see that, oh yes, I'm making some progress. What it means to be detached is precisely this. Why are you doing the actual practice? It's to achieve a goal, but is the goal merely something that is out there, way off into the future? No, the goal is also to transform yourself today in such a way that, indeed, you don't have anxiety, that indeed you are calm, you are at peace, etc. So what does it mean to do practice, spiritual practice, and to allow that practice to itself be the vehicle that will give you anxiety? This is why we practice this vairagya, this detachment, where what we are to say to ourselves is, as we are doing our meditation day after day after day, we are doing this really, and this is the mystery revealed. Why are we doing our meditation every day? Why are we trying to grow every day? For really one reason: to please God. When we have this attitude, then we don't have that anxiety. See, when you have a numerical attitude toward this, a numerical approach, a quantitative approach, where you're thinking in terms of, all right, well, I was here yesterday. Oh, now I'm here. Oh, the next day, I grew a little bit slower, but now I'm here. The next day, I grew this. You're thinking quantity, quantity, quantity. That's what gives you the anxiety, because quantity is material. So thus you are investing the spiritual, i.e. your practice, with the material, with that anxiety. If instead we gauge our so-called progress by this other factor, then the material is gone, the numerical is gone. Instead, every day as we meditate, before we begin, we shouldn't be doing this as we meditate. As you meditate, you're focused like a laser beam on what you are meditating upon, and that should be a sacred mantra revealed in the Vedas. But as you're meditating, you say to yourself, before you meditate, and then after you reflect on this, you say to yourself, I'm going to meditate now, and it is to please God. It is to please God. It is to please God. When you think in this way, you have left ego in the dust. You have left ahankara, ego, in the dust, because now you're not doing it just for you. See, this is why, again, I'm one of the few people, maybe the only person, who says this again and again and again. Even spiritual people can be egotistical. If instead they're thinking, oh, yes, let me make progress. Oh, I'm the best meditator on the planet. Kind of like an Olympics of meditation. Oh, my Lord. Maybe 30 years ago, there was the funniest article in Hinduism Today. I'm friends with the publishers of Hinduism Today. And they had the funniest article where they made up this yoga Olympics, and they literally had funny little made up things like this. Some yogi, kind of fist bumping in the air and saying, "I am the best meditator. Here's a gold gold medal for you. I am the most enlightened. I'm second most. Oh, okay, you get the bronze." It was hilarious. It was in Hinduism today, like 30 years ago. When people think in this way, that produces nothing but anxiety in the name of spirituality. When instead, our attitude is, why am I meditating? Why am I trying to become better and better each day? Why am I trying to have a more still mind? Why am I trying to acquire wisdom? Why am I doing all these? It is only to please God. Then that ego is gone. And the anxiety goes away. So in doing your meditation, again, have this attitude that that's why you're doing it. The anxiety will go away. Very good. Let me look at this last question. Maybe I'll answer this. Let me try to decipher it, though. Make sure I understand it completely. All right. Let me answer this action. It's not going to take, this is a simple question. It's not going to take a long time. What would you advise to a person who has lost their honor and contemplates suicide in the name of penance and possibly transcending the fear of death? That is a petty individual. That's a very egotistical individual. That's a child. That's exactly everything that I talk about every single week as an individual who's pretending to be spiritual but who's actually just very confused. These are two self-contradictory things. If an individual indeed wants to do actual penance, wants to transcend their fear of death, then they don't do anything to lose their honor or contemplate suicide. This is someone who's schizophrenic. This is not a spiritual person in any way, shape, or form. And what I would suggest to that person is that they and I mean this very seriously, they need to seek help as far as these suicidal tendencies. There's no such thing as an individual trying to commit suicide while trying to grow spiritually. That's someone who's mentally ill. So I would suggest that that person get some sort of help, whatever they can, number one, and that number two, that they embrace actual spirituality. What they're doing is concocted nonsense, self-serving, ego-driven, concocted nonsense. That's narcissistic. Instead, they have to practice sattvic spirituality. Let me tell you, the greatest sages, to say that they have transcended the fear of death is almost meaningless to say. Of course that's the case, beyond anything that almost anyone can understand. They have transcended the fear of death, and without having to harm themselves and their mental health to do so. Indeed, it is sattvically that you come to the point where you no longer fear death and that you transcend all illusion. Sattvically, that is by, what did you say, giving up your honor? No, by being the most honorable person imaginable, by being noble, by being, get this word, Arya. Be noble. That's how you grow. Never be dishonorable. Always be loyal, always be good, always be ethical, always be virtuous. And again, follow the true path, and you will grow spiritually. Follow this path, you'll go in the opposite direction. And how do you know that true path? What have we been saying? Read the Bhagavad Gita with your ego aside. The Bhagavad Gita is not yet another tool for you to boost your ego and to gain more powers, personal powers for yourself. This is occultic, satanic, left-hand path, Luciferian, garbage and nonsense for children who haven't grown up yet to the point where they can now practice real spirituality. Read the Bhagavad Gita with humility. Read the Bhagavad Gita understanding that these are the words of someone infinitely greater than you, God himself. delivered unto you, such that if there is even the slightest little smattering of sincerity in you, that you will then follow these divine words of Bhagavad Gita and truly grow spiritually. So this is what I would say, and I'm saying this out of pure compassion. If an individual, whoever this person is, if they are ready to grow up and be a truly spiritual person, come to the ISDS. Don't come to us, however, unless you can come to us with sincerity, humility, and honesty. If you can, if you have that strength within you, that discipline within you, come to the International Sanatana Dharma Society, and we'll gauge whether that's the case. We'll know, trust me, if you are sincere, if you have humility, if you have honesty within you. And we will help you to know yourself perfectly, to know God, and to achieve the full and true meaning of life. But it begins with this. Make yourself small such that you can enter that divine door. Because the door is small. It's not for everyone. Acharya? Very good. All right. With that, we will indeed end here. I thank you all for your questions. I thank you all for being here as well. Before we end, let me just say a few very quick things. Just the same announcements that I tend to make, but they're important because we often have very new people who maybe this is their first time here. First of all, indeed, we have a Discord forum that is dedicated to the teachings of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. It's not pan-Hinduism. It's not, oh, come there and spew your own ideas, etc., etc. We don't care about your ideas. You have nothing to teach us. Let me say that again. You have nothing to teach us. Nothing. Nothing. Why? Because we're so great? Because we're brilliant? No, actually we're not. That's not the reason. Well, my disciples are all brilliant. Actually, you would be shocked if you knew what many of my disciples are. Many of them are actually PhDs, MDs, many of them are amazing individuals. I have disciples who are multimillionaires. I have disciples who are about to become leaders of their nations. We have amazing people. But that's not why you have nothing to teach us. It's because everything that we know is based upon the Vedic scriptures. So if you want to learn about Sanatana Dharma purely, perfectly, authentically, in an orthodox way, nothing made up, nothing new, not even the slightest little dirty tinge of modernity added to it. Sanatana Dharma the way that it was taught in the Dvapara Yuga. If this is what you want, if and only if, please join our Discord forum. And what are you going to find there? Hundreds and hundreds of devotees of the ISDS who are wonderful and who will humbly answer your questions, who will help you, who will guide you, who will help you with sadhana, who will help you even with personal problems, with everything, anything. But again, only if you join with humility. So join our Discord forum if you are qualified in the ways that I just said. And I'm sure that in the chat, yes, it is there. The link is there. Follow that link and join. The other thing I want to say is that we have our main website. We actually have many websites dedicated to many different things. But our main website is dharmacentral.com. Please visit that website when you can, and it is a treasure trove of information on Sanatana Dharma. Many of our books are available there. The ISDS has published 13 books thus far, all authoritative books on various aspects of Sanatana Dharma. So please feel free to purchase our books, become a member of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, a monthly tithing member. Indeed, this is not just some organization. It most certainly is not just some YouTube channel. I've been doing this before the internet existed. We have a movement. We have a movement. And you can become a supporter of the ISDS by becoming a member or by giving a one-time donation. Again, all that information is available on dharmacentral.com. Please join us next Sunday. And again, please join us on the other side. Please join us on the other side of what's about to happen. And it will be our pleasure to be with you again and to continue teaching you Sanatana Dharma. And with that, everyone, I ask you to all please take very, very good care of yourselves. And namaste. And everyone together, let's usher in this golden age by being as enthusiastic as possible as we say, Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharmarashtra Jayate.
Dharmarashtra Jayate.
Suryavansha Jayate.
Suryavansha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
May Sanatana Dharma be completely victorious in the immediate future. Evam bhavatu. May it be so. And so it shall be. And with that, everyone, I will leave you with, again, these words from Bhagavan Sri Krishna, from the Bhagavad Gita, which we've been speaking about, chapter 18, verse 66. And what Bhagavan Sri Krishna says is, Ma shuchaha, do not fear. I will see you all next week.